Welcome to Secured with Dr. KJ, the podcast where we break down cybersecurity, the technologies driving it, and the companies shaping our digital future. I'm your host, Dr. Kenneth Johnson, cybersecurity leader, technologist, and strategist. Cybersecurity isn't just an IT concern, it's a business imperative. Each episode, we'll explore key topics like cloud security, zero trust, AI-driven defense, and more. We'll assess how tech leaders are adapting, where they need to improve, and what it takes to stay ahead of evolving threats. This podcast features expert insights from security professionals, industry leaders, and technologists, offering real-world solutions to modern cybersecurity challenges. Whether you're a business leader, security expert, or just curious about how technology keeps us safe, this podcast is for you. Subscribe and join the conversation as we explore cybersecurity's biggest challenges, securing tomorrow, one episode at a time. Welcome back to Secured with Dr. KJ, where we explore the ever-evolving world of cybersecurity, one episode at a time. Today, we're diving into one of the most critical and rapidly expanding frontiers in cybersecurity, the Internet of Things. From connected manufacturing floors to smart cities and healthcare devices, the attack surface is exploding and the risks are real. Joining me is Maurice Hampton, a seasoned cybersecurity and IT leader with over 2 decades of experience. Maurice currently serves as the Director of Cybersecurity Solution Sales for the East at Microsoft, where he helps organizations assess, select, and implement security technologies that protect their digital ecosystems. With a background spanning security architecture, technical planning, and executive level engagement, Maurice brings deep perspective across cybersecurity domains. He's also a frequent speaker and holds top industry certifications like the CISSP and the CISM. Maurice, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, KJ. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts with you guys.
No, 100%. And let's jump right into the first question. So, as the number of connected devices continues to grow, how has the attack surface evolved and what makes IoT security uniquely challenging?
Oh man, that's a big question, and I'm not sure we have enough time to get into all the details, but the reality is that, if you think about, for example, what the attack surface looked like 10 years ago or 20 years ago, looking at IoT devices, they may have, I'll use an example of like a manufacturer. An IoT device may have stood alone on a manufacturing plant floor, whereas an operator would then, put some parameters into that device and then use it to stamp out machine parts throughout the course of their day, their work day. But if you fast forward it to today and think about what an IoT network looks like, that same operator stamping out that same part has so many different inputs today. That person may have, an efficiency goal and, which is related to a downstream or upstream process, which forces that operator to operate, either faster or slower, or, for example, potentially, making tweaks or shifting that line or that operation to something else for the rest of that day versus continuing to do the same thing. So the point being there is that device that used to be standalone is now interconnected, whereas many years ago that didn't happen. For example, one of the other things that we think about when we think about IoT devices is the update process also. So that attack surface that may have existed before because that device stood alone, it didn't need to be updated, and as a result of its interconnectivity today, now you have to be able to update that device on a regular basis for whatever reason. So, the attack surface has grown exponentially simply due to the nature of being interconnected right now.
No, that is all great points. So then how do you balance the innovation and the convenience there and the need for security in that IoT for those types of deployments?
Well, there is the $1 million question. So if you think about, in the past, that the operator was able to manage that device. And, frankly, if that one device went down or something like that, the impact to the organization was limited and focused. Whereas because of the interconnected nature of the IoT environments today, those things are 100% dependent on being able to be, have agile processes to make sure that they stay up and have, consistent uptime. So, you have to balance the need for updating, to your point, those devices on a regular basis with the risk posture and risk exposure that these devices have. So I say all that to say that, it is not an easy, problem to solve. However, it is a necessary thing for organizations to continue to focus on.
No, I would agree. So last kind of thought around this is, so like, are there specific devices that you've come across within your career in environments where these IoT devices can be really vulnerable?
Oh, goodness. So I'm very fortunate or unfortunate, depending on how you look at it here.
Right.
But I've seen a ton of different types of devices throughout my career. Everything from as I mentioned, manufacturing shop floor devices, air conditioning units, building control systems, and even one example that I have is a major metropolitan transportation authority that had IoT devices that controlled train signaling. You talk about having a risk that needs to be secured, or devices that need to be secured well. It's going to be, those devices that manage human transportation and therefore could be life impacting. So yeah, I've seen all sorts of devices, and, every one of those has a different risk posture and a different way that they should be addressed in terms of the cybersecurity footprint.
Wow. So basically what you're telling me is this IoT thing here is here to stay forever.
It is here to stay. It is growing exponentially. And, unfortunately, what I've seen in recent years is that the pace of growth and innovation in the IoT world is outpacing the security controls that people have applied to them, which puts us in a really sticky situation in terms of our risk to both humans and, businesses as well.
No, I love that. And that's a great segue. Is so like, what are some of the best practices organizations should follow when building a security strategy for their IoT, from the edge to the cloud?
So as I kind of alluded to in the previous, question,
Right.
technical controls are important, but in terms of best practices, there is a crawl, walk, run approach that I would probably take. Number one is going to be, simply acknowledging the fact that your organization has an issue with IoT proliferation and lack of security controls. Like, a lot of organizations don't even acknowledge that. They
Right.
kind of put their head in the sand, which is a really bad idea. So, acknowledging it and making sure that you escalate that concern to leadership, so that then you can align budgets in activities to start to address that. Second, one of the things that I would do is focus on, understanding what the current state is. If you can't protect what you don't know exists, so you need to actually implement, or I'd say not implement, but engage in some sort of comprehensive study or assessment to figure out what the current state is of your IoT footprint. And once you've completed that process, you've gotten the organization lined up and acknowledging that you've got these issues or concerns, you've gotten, an assessment done, what your current state is, then it's time to start implementing some sort of controls. I would focus on technical controls, doing some sort of, implementing some sort of tool to, be able to gather information and about the current state as well as future changes to that IoT footprint. Once you do that, it's about, creating a repeatable process and so on and so forth. But it's got to start with acknowledgement, assessment, and then implementing controls. If you try to implement controls without doing an assessment, and understanding what the current state is, and, don't have that aligned with organizational backing, then you're all out of order. So making sure that you do it in that order.
No, I love it. So acknowledge, understand, and then controls. That would be a really good start to a framework, and then continue on growth from there within that framework. So I
Yeah,
love that.
absolutely. I've actually got a great example of that. I kind of mentioned that transportation authority that
Right.
I alluded to earlier.
Hmm.
They went through the process of number one, acknowledging the fact that they've got this concern about these controls environments associated with specifically trains and buses at that particular point. They went through this really extensive audit. They brought in a third party to actually help them with that. One of the big four accounting firms, management consulting firms. They did this phenomenal readout to the board. The board then dedicated resources and executive sponsorship to the CISO of this organization to go out
Right.
and then start to address this. They went through this. One of the first steps that they did was resegmentation of their entire network, not just the
Wow.
IoT devices or IoT networks, because they realized that because these things were implemented over time,
Hmm.
there was tech debt and creep, scope creep and all these other issues that they had associated with these networks. So they
Yeah.
felt like an entire network redesign was in order as a result
Wow.
of this. After they did that, they actually, during that redesign process, they deployed specific IoT sensors on
Hmm.
all networks, which was fantastic. Those
Right.
IoT sensors were also AI enabled,
Hmm.
so that because there's really no way of taking a look at all the data that's generated from by a single human or a team of
Right.
humans. So they needed some sort of AI capability, and then they actually put that into a SOC where and created playbooks associated with IoT alerts. So just a perfect example of executing an IoT program, IoT security program from cradle to grave. It was just phenomenal.
No, I love that. That's a great example. And so when we look at the visibility and control, and you kind of alluded to some of this as I think as well, visibility and control are often cited as some of the biggest gaps in IoT environments. How can these security teams gain better insight into what's connected, and how do they really manage the risk at scale? And I think before you even answer, I think a lot of it comes down to utilizing AI as well. But would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that previous example that I
Hmm.
gave there regarding that transportation authority really hits to the key topic that you're talking about right now. It's a vulnerability assessment or just assessment in general is going to be done through the implementation of specific tools, but you have to understand your network in order to do that. So, that particular example that I talked about, they actually took the approach of being, regardless of the network that they were on, they wanted to discover IoT devices because you don't always know where people are deploying these things, or there are people who have shadow IT out there, and without deploying specific assessment capabilities or tools on technical tools on those networks or broadly across your organization,
Right.
people could plug in something that's IoT related in a non-IoT network, and then you're equally as exposed as you were before. Broad visibility is done by complete and comprehensive tool deployment and visibility. So that's the only way you can do it, is to really make sure that you broadly deploy those tool sets and apply those controls to all those different networks.
No, I love that. And so when we think in terms of just industry, right? You think healthcare, you think manufacturing and so forth, right? The smart cities, as you've kind of alluded to as well, right? Like when when these folks are trying to keep pace with security, and the rapid IoT adoption, like what does that look like? How are they ensuring that it's secure? Because yes, tools are a part of it, people are a part of it, but there are so many different avenues. What are your thoughts around just how they should start? I know we talked about acknowledge, understanding, and the controls, right? But what are some other things that they can look at internally, right? At their with their with their environment or within their people
Mm-hmm.
to then help them adopt and move very quickly to thwart these attacks and so forth.
That's an interesting one because I think a lot of organizations have traditionally not implemented IoT security programs because they simply are not prepared, or they realize they're not prepared for the sheer volume of data and findings that they will have as a result of implementing something. So they just say, hey, we're going to stick our head in the sand and not do anything.
Right.
That's obviously the wrong approach. We need to make sure that without an understanding or acknowledgement, you're never going to make, forward progress. So, again, the only way to do that is to, number one, understand what you have, but you have to have repeatable processes and create, you'll also find that these IoT security programs aren't going to be implemented in a vacuum. So you may have an IoT security program that's going to also have connections to your vendor security program. It's going to, so that vendor security lead in your organization is going to have to work with your IoT, vendors to ensure that the devices that they may manage that sit on your premises are updated on a regular basis. So you're going to have that connection to that program. Then you're going to have the connection to the audit committee, or the audit team, internal audit, because they're going to want to know what type of things you're doing to address the macro risk posture of the organization. Then you're going to be working with the security team. Then you're going to be working with operations. So I would say that, implementing this IoT security program and addressing risk is going to be a team sport. It's not going to be something that one individual or one small group of individuals is going to be responsible for, running and then correcting and remediating issues and then, running a program. It's going to be a team sport. You're going to have everyone in the boat rowing in the same direction in order to address the risk for the organization that IoT presents.
No, it's an amazing thought and answer there, Maurice. So would love to get some of your, you've dropped a lot of nuggets today for the listeners. And so love to get some of your final thoughts around, the future and what it looks like.
That's a great way to close this episode out, because I guess the thing that I would say is take some action for everyone. You absolutely need to understand that implementing an IoT security program is not an insurmountable task. It can be done. We understand today what good looks like, so you can paint good. You understand that. There are perfect examples out there. So take some action. Again, get other people in the boat with you, making sure that you are not trying to row upriver alone. And then understand that, that this is a crawl, walk, run scenario. You're going to have to do something. You're going to start in a certain place, and your program is going to get better over time. You're going to have to definitely utilize in an enterprise scale. You're going to have to utilize AI and machine learning in order to augment that, and then make sure that you understand what you're going to do when you find things. So if you have an IoT security, alert that pops up in your SOC, understand specifically how that playbook is going to run so that you can remediate and address that issue. So get started, take action, and make sure that it's a repeatable process and well documented.
Thank you very much, Maurice. Love having you on the show.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
And that wraps another episode of Secured with Dr. KJ. A huge thank you to Maurice Hampton for sharing his expertise and walking us through the complexities of IoT security. From understanding your current state to executing a resilient enterprise-grade program. If there's one key takeaway, it's this. Securing the Internet of Things is a team sport. From visibility and control to vendor management and governance, organizations need alignment, ownership, and repeatable practices to stay ahead. If this episode sparks some ideas or a few alarms, don't keep it to yourself. Like, share, and subscribe to Secured with Dr. KJ for more conversations that help you stay proactive in the fight for cybersecurity. As always, we're securing tomorrow, one episode at a time.